Greetings, this is Paul the Poke from PaulthePoke.com, and welcome to This Week in Prophecy. So we got a few things to cover this week. Not a lot of different topics, but we're going to go into depth into a couple of these. I got a map of Israel and essentially Jordan, looking at Amman, Jordan over here. And then, of course, we have Jerusalem. We have a story, Temple Mount's back in focus from the Jerusalem Post, which the fact that that's taking place, that the Jerusalem Post is publishing an article regarding the temple, the Jewish temple, is just continues to fascinate me. These people are essentially apolitical, secular, and why all of a sudden we're starting to see a few articles creep out in a very left-leaning news organization regarding the temple and the Temple Mount, I find just very fascinating. We're also going to jump a little bit to the east to Amman, Jordan. We got some internal strife taking place within the Hashemite Kingdom between King Abdullah and his half-brother. Also, Russia has blocked all energy to Finland. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also going to spend some time talking about Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. She has been banned from receiving communion from the Catholic Church because of her statement and support of abortion. And lastly, we're going to spend some time talking about the newest disease, pestilence, monkeypox. We're going to get into that. That seems to be gaining some steam in the mainstream press, and how that's being framed is pretty fascinating. I also saw an article today where they are talking about getting those vaccines ready for monkeypox. So here we go again. Save you with all these vaccines. But we're going to take a look. First of all, we're going to go to Jerusalem, and we're going to spend some time. There you have it, the Dome of the Rock. We're going to go to the Temple Mount. And the name of this article out of the Jerusalem Post is The Address of God. And there it is. They get a picture of the temple. And effectively, this is an article that's written from a Kabbalist standpoint. And it's mathematical in concept. And let's just look at the outlines. Briefly recall some of the ideas expressed, examining the theory of likeness. This is a previous article. Talks about creation, represented as information of space of concepts expressed in symbols. Talk a little bit about space and distance, the human soul. And in this article, we will look at the practical application of the theory of likeness to find hidden connections in the Torah and gain a deeper understanding of its concepts. Now, this is pretty heavy reading for you folks who are not into the math of this, and kind of a mystical, mathematical look at creation and how they arrive at some of their understandings. This may not be your thing. For some of you folks who are math nerds like myself, they effectively talk about the golden ratio, or 1.61, or Fibonacci sequences, the Fibonacci number. You guys might find this very interesting. Obviously, it's in geometry, structure of the galaxies, quantum physics, biology, design of plants, art, architecture. It boils down to what's pleasing to the eye. And then also the mathematics stability. And it frankly I know some folks are into the stock market, Fibonacci numbers and Fibonacci retracements. We kind of group, we move and make decisions in Fibonacci sequences loosely. So some of that stuff's very fascinating, very interesting, and it's all over nature. And look at the sequence and how the sequence is derived, and it's called the golden ratio. I'll skip through a lot of this, but also this sequence, this ratio is present in the Ark of the Covenant. The cover of the Ark of the Covenant, it's present on the altar, and it's present in Noah's Ark. This thing's everywhere, within God's word, within some of God's structures. but it's in nature, and it's in creation. And I'll scroll down and not spend a whole lot of time in this. This is pretty deep, heavy reading. But the idea being, questions will be answered in the following article. Edward Schifrin's book, From Infinity to Man, The Fundamental Ideas of Kabbalah Within the Framework of Information Theory and Quantum Physics. So it's heavy duty math and quantum physics, particle physics, etc. So interesting read, I'll say that. And again, for those of you who want to take a deeper dive into some of this, the link will be provided on the website, also at YouTube. But again, the main thing to me that just got my attention is that here we have another article about the Jewish temple, what will be the third Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, and the Jerusalem Post is supporting it and allowing it to be published. And well, they mention it's under Kabbalah, Kabbalism, Kabbalist, whatever. You say Kabbalah, I say Kabbalah. And then we'll go from there. We'll move a little bit east. We'll skip over here from Jerusalem to Amman, Jordan. And this would be Jordan's King Abdullah imposes severe restrictions on half-brother. And this would be, he is the crown prince Hamza bin Hussein. That is King Abdullah's half-brother. Now, last year we had a little infighting, and the king, Abdullah, accused his half-brother of trying to start a coup and accused of trying to destabilize the monarchy in a foreign-inspired plot. So the Hashemite Kingdom, not all is well. Now, for those of you who have been following This Week in Prophecy and also the Watchman, Checkmate's talked about Jordan and the Transjordan area extensively. And a point he often makes is, if we reach a point to where something's going to have to change or give politically, or it would appear to need to change politically, that will allow Russia and friends access to Jordan in their future invasion of Israel in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And so there have been some little whispers of some things taking place, and there's some instability. Not all is well inside Jordan politically. And I think this article breaks this down even further. And we got some quotes here from King Abdullah. And he made the comment, and there's King Abdullah right there, announced he was renouncing the title of prince to his half-brother, saying his personal convictions were not in line with the modern methods of our institutions. Translation, we're not on the same page there, half-brother, and you need to get on my page. Well, he's not. And in his message, King Abdullah says, I am writing to you in the hope of turning a dark page in the history of our country and our family. As you know, when the details of the sedition case were revealed last year, I chose to deal with my brother, Prince Hamza, within the framework of our family, hoping that he would realize his mistake and come to his senses. However, after a year and a half during which he exhausted all opportunities to return to his senses and adhere to the biography of our family, I came to the disappointing conclusion that he will not change. So he is not fallen in line. Hamza lives in an illusion in which he sees himself as the guardian of the Hashemite heritage. And the king would further go on to say his repeated speeches reflected his state of denial of the reality in which he lives and his refusal to bear any responsibility for his actions. My half-brother Hamza is still ignoring all the facts and hard evidence and manipulating facts and events to reinforce his false narrative. Unfortunately, my brother really believes what he claims. The illusion he is living is not new. He ignores the facts, denies the principles, and assumes the role of the victim. Now, of course, King says he's had the utmost degree of tolerance, self-restraint, and patience in this situation. And time's up. And with this, he will now be restricted from movement and talking, and it kind of sounds like house arrest, like slapped with severe restrictions. Not going to get to move around, not going to get to talk in public. Game over, essentially. So we're going to silence him, is what it looks like is taking place. So all is not well in Jordan. And again, this is out of the Jerusalem Post. For those of you who want to dig a little deeper, provide a link for this as well. And from that, we're going to transition from the Middle East, and we are going to go north. Specifically, we're going to take a look at the happenings between Moscow and Finland. And as you know, I think about a week ago, Finland decided, along with Sweden, to apply for NATO membership. And right after they did that, Russia stops gas supplies to Finland. Putin turns off the taps after months of saber-rattling of following Helsinki's announcement that it will join NATO. Putin wants payments for energy in rubles in a bid to ease pressure from sanctions. By the way, that's working. I saw the other day, what was it? The ruble is up 5 or 6% in strength compared to the dollar. And that's comparing it pre-invasion of Ukraine. So economically, the ruble is gaining strength and Russia's having more purchasing power. The decision to cut off gas to Finland was likely a retaliation to apply to NATO. I think it was very much the reason. Comes as a war in Ukraine continues, with Putin's forces claiming to have finally taken the city of Mariupol. So, and because you're not paying in rubles, we're not going to give you natural gas. And so here, this is a great map, and this is courtesy of Daily Mail. And we're talking about north of here, but you can see all of the gas lines, natural gas line, gas lines coming from Russia, moving west to Europe, from the Blue Stream, Turk Stream, Transgas, Yamal, Europe, Nord Stream. You hear a lot about Nord Stream in the news, as well as Nord Stream 2, which is taking natural gas down in through Poland and to Germany. Now, this Yamal, Europe, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the word Yamal in Russia means friendship. So kind of sick and twisted. The friendship pipeline to Europe. By the way, we're turning it off because you're not paying us in rubles. Is what it is. But Russia continues to tell countries, Germany, Poland, Italy, France, no natural gas unless you pay in rubles. Now, the folks in these countries seem to have found a compromise with this. The nations, the states themselves. So, for example, Italy, Germany, France, the countries themselves are not paying, but they have companies inside of these countries who are setting up contracts with the Russians to make payment in rubles. So, although technically the country is not paying for the natural gas or the resource in rubles, companies within the countries are paying for delivery in rubles. That way, we're not violating any of our threats and sanctions. Makes it okay with a little sleight of hand. And Putin's making more money than he did pre-invasion. Rubles up, cost more in rubles, more purchasing power for the Russians. Seems to be working. And with that, we're going to go to a very controversial topic. I typically stay away from this, but our Speaker of the House in the United States, Nancy Pelosi, has been banned from receiving communion in San Francisco Archdiocese over her position on abortion. Now, before we get into what actually is said by the Archdiocese, I have an acquaintance who's Jewish, so he's not an American citizen, and he makes an observation over the topic of abortion. And he says, America makes no sense. A pregnant woman who is killed or a murder is committed against a pregnant woman, the murderer or the alleged murderer is charged with 2 counts of murder. The woman he murdered plus the child living inside the woman. So it's like a double homicide as the law would see it. But yet, as he observes, it's okay to murder the child that's inside the woman, and that's legal. And it's actually encouraged in this country. He goes, it makes no sense. And again, just the fact that I state that, I mean, this is a guy who's just making an observation. And we are at a place in our country right now, we cannot even make an observation on this topic of abortion without being accused of being political. It's like whatever you say about abortion, however you see it, is going to be it's going to be charged as political. So now, with all that said, I understand that what I'm getting myself into, and I'm just reading the news of what happened. This is from CNN.com, and we start we start out the conservative Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone, says House Speaker Nancy Pelosi may no longer receive the Holy Sacrament of Communion in the Archdiocese because she supports abortion rights. And we will get, now he's talked to her, and he wrote to her, told her, you should not publicly repudiate your advocacy for abortion rights or else refrain from referring to your Catholic faith in public and receiving Holy Communion. If you keep doing this, I would have no choice but to make a declaration in keeping with Canon 915 that you are not to be admitted to Holy Communion. Well, you think Nancy listened to the Archdiocese? No, she didn't. And then, which led to this statement. And again, this is from the Archbishop of San Francisco. As you have not publicly repudiated your position on abortion and continue to refer to your Catholic faith in justifying your position and to receive Holy Communion, that time has now come. Therefore, in light of my responsibility as the Archbishop of San Francisco to be concerned for all the Christian faithful entrusted to care, quotes the Code of Canon Law. This is Canon 383. Subscript 1? By means of this communication, I am hereby notifying you that you are not to present yourself for Holy Communion, and should you do so, you are not to be admitted to Holy Communion until such a time as you publicly repudiate your advocacy for the legitimacy of abortion and confess and receive absolution for this grave sin in the sacrament of penance. I mean, he just called Nancy a sinner. That is not going to set well with Nancy. And Nancy was out looking around today, trying to skirt the issue, looking for a more liberal faction within the Catholic Church, wanting somebody to justify her position. Because, as you know, Nancy is not a sinner. She wants to be able to go have communion. So, anyhow, brave man, Salvatore Cordileone. I'd probably butcher it. Salvatore Cordileone. Conservative. CNN made sure to drop that label. Conservative Archbishop of San Francisco has spoken out and against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So, no communion for you. at least not in San Francisco at that archdiocese. I'm going to close with Luke 21, verse 11. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places, famines and pestilence, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. And speaking of this, is just the sequence of things. My wife and I were talking about this the other night. Okay, so we have famines and pestilence, and it's also, frankly, part of a pattern that you see in Revelation 6. We're starting to see it happen in Ukraine. It has happened in Syria with the Syrian civil war, and it's happening in Yemen down in the Arabian Peninsula. And if you just look at the pattern, so you have war, you have pestilence, or I'm sorry, you have famine, and then you have pestilence. And we're starting to see that happening. I mean, so, if they keep fighting, we're going to have famine, and we're seeing that with food supply chains breaking down. I mean, we are 3 to 5 months away from having a significant grain issue to in the neighborhood of 300 to 400 million people across North Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Europe. 300 to 400 people will be suffering from a lack of grain and food. Highly likely to happen. And then after the famines, it leads to pestilence. It is what it is. And again, it's a pattern. It's a pattern of Revelation 6. It takes place on a global level, but we're seeing that happening in our world. Started in Syria 2011. It's been going on for the last few years in Yemen, and started early part of 2022 in Ukraine. Is what it is. I hope we're paying attention. But we're going to focus on tonight. We're going to look at pestilence. And a lot of hype taking place in the mainstream media. And it's time to meet our newest boogeyman, monkeypox. May 2022, new cases, typically limited to Africa, begin spreading in Europe and North America, known as monkeypox. It's a milder form of smallpox. Gradual increase of cases over the last decade. So we're going to explain what it is. We have some swollen lymph nodes, muscle aches, fever, headache, and rash. And I mean, we got some serious, little pustules or little pus pockets that fill up on. They look like little blisters. You can see it on this hand up here. But you see somebody who gets these things, they call it a rash. It's more than a rash. I mean, they look like boils on people. Typically, monkeypox is found in the rainforests of West and Central Africa. You can see some of the countries where this takes place: Sierra Leone, Liberia, Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Gabon, Nigeria, Central African Republic, and Democratic Republic of Congo. West African strain, not as deadly as the Central African strain. Monkeypox is actually a misnomer, since it most commonly infects small African mammals and rodents. And this is where the semantic framing of this disease begins. How does it spread? Spreads primarily through respiratory droplets, though transmission is generally low. Most commonly spreads between humans and animals in a number of ways. Humans, close contact, touching sores or bodily fluids, touching personal belongings that have made contact with the sores. I'm not going to get into the animals, how it spreads within the animals. Monkeypox is able to resolve on its own after 2 to 4 weeks. Extreme cases, no proven cure. That's pretty rare. But to help manage the symptoms and prevent future outbreaks, we can use antivirals, vaccines, and then a smallpox vaccine will also help. I mean, so a lot of us as kids had the smallpox vaccine, so probably going to be okay. But this is a theme here. This is from CNBC. CDC officials sound alarm for gay and bisexual men as monkeypox spreads in their community. This is an adult conversation. So at this point, if you want to keep kids away from this, I highly recommend it. We're going to get down to some explicit details of what's going on here, and probably going to get in trouble with social media for talking about this, but oh well. Dr. John Brooks, a CDC official, emphasized that anyone can contract monkeypox through close personal contact, regardless of sexual orientation. Anyone, so that's all of us, you can get monkeypox regardless of your sexual orientation. However, CDC officials sound the alarm for gay and bisexual men. Monkeypox is spreading in this community. However, Brooks said many of the people affected globally so far are men who identify as gay or bisexual. We want to help people make the best informed decisions to protect their health and the health of their community from monkeypox. All right. Not many. Actually, the numbers are up from this. This was released yesterday. Numbers continue to go up. Scroll down here. And this is where we start splitting hairs. Okay. And every article I've read about 3 so far, and they all want to go on to this particular point of the story. Monkeypox is not a sexually transmitted disease, which is generally passed through semen or vaginal fluid, but can be transmitted through sexual and intimate contact, as well as through shared bedding. Virus spreads through the contact with body fluids and sores. And it's important for physicians and individuals to be aware symptoms associated with monkeypox, particularly anal or genital lesions, can be confused with herpes, syphilis, or even chickenpox. So anyone with a rash or lesion around or involving their genitals, their anus, or any other place that they have not seen it before should be fully evaluated. But for that rash, particularly for sexually transmitted infection and other illnesses that can cause rash. Mind you, this is not a sexually transmitted disease, but it can kind of look like one. And it is being spread through sexual activity or intimate activity. It is not a sexually transmitted disease. Monkeypox usually begins with symptoms similar to the flu, including fever, headache, muscle aches, chills, exhaustion, and swollen lymph nodes. Then progresses to the body, rashes on the face, hands, feet, eyes, mouth, or genitals, turned into raised bumps, which become blisters. Okay. Dr. Jennifer McQuiston, she's a CDC official. Long respiratory period can spread through respiratory droplets, but as to quote her, this is not COVID. Respiratory spread is not the predominant worry. It is contact and intimate contact in the current outbreak setting and population. End quote, Dr. McQuiston. And as a reminder, this is not a sexually transmitted disease. One case of monkeypox in Massachusetts, and then we have 4 cases of orthopox, which I don't know, what's that, bird pox? I don't know. State labs that can identify orthopox, which are presumed to be monkeypox. So they're not technically monkeypox, presumed to be monkeypox. Those don't count, although we've got cases of that taking place too. So anyway, keep your eyes on it. I get the sense we're going to be hearing more and more about monkeypox. We even take the time to tell you, hey, we got a vaccine coming out. It's about 85% effective at preventing monkeypox. That's based on research in Africa, according to the CDC. And we're in luck. The U.S. has a stockpile of 100 million doses. Older generation of the vaccine called ACAM 2000. It's approved by the FDA. High risk for smallpox, but vaccine can have significant side effects, and any decision to use it widely would require serious discussion. Well, I'm sure they're going to determine it's good for us, and we all need it for our own safety. Just following the pattern of recent history, just making an observation. So, also, McQuiston would go on to say, we're hoping to maximize vaccine distribution to those that we know would benefit from it. So they know who would benefit from it, although it has significant side effects. Oh, so those people who have been in contact with a known monkeypox patient, healthcare workers, very close personal contacts, and those in particular who might be at high risk for severe disease. So keep your eyes open. So again, a sign of the times, is what it is. That's all I got for this week in prophecy. Appreciate everybody who's following along. Wishing you all a great week. Hope to catch up with you soon. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.